Good afternoon and welcome to, of course, the big show. The big show, we do it every single day here at the Post-Gazette. I'm Paul Zeise, of course. We do the big show. We talk about whatever we have to talk about when it comes to sports. And, as the saying goes, do you believe in miracles? I guess the first thing we could say is that the Pirates actually won a game today. But we'll talk about the Pirates a little bit later down the stretch. A little bit of, tough, bad news, sad news, however you want to say it. Ray Shedeur, former Penguins general manager, died, 62 years old. Obviously, that's way too young. And so, condolences to his family, to the Penguins. Obviously, there's a number of people still in the organization who knew Ray very well, people around the town. So there is that going on, of course. Another Pitt player has left the building, which means I think if my calculations are correct, there's only 3 left on scholarship. And, of course, they've added a couple of commitments from Iowa State. But at the end of the day, let's talk a little bit about what I would think is the best news that could possibly happen for the Steelers, if you ask me. The reality is, they're hosting tomorrow Shedeur Sanders. Now, I understand why there's all kinds of what I would call negative energy and negative press, whatever you want to say when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. I get it. There's a lot of people who just don't like him, don't like his dad, obviously, don't like, all of the bling and all of the in-your-face, obnoxious stuff that really has gone on in Colorado the last couple of years. And so I understand that. But I think it would be tremendous, absolutely tremendous, if the Steelers found a way to draft Shedeur Sanders and then signed Aaron Rodgers, and you had those 2 guys in your quarterback room. The Steelers would all of a sudden become the most entertaining team on the planet. They really would. They would become the most entertaining team around, even if they never won. Because there's, the thing about Rodgers and the thing about Shedeur Sanders, they're so polarizing with everything they do. Could you imagine the scrutiny? But not just that, they're polarizing, and the factions of people that like one of them probably don't like the other one. Now, again, we don't always like to get into sweeping generalizations and things of the such, but let's go down this rabbit hole for a minute. The people that seem to hate Aaron Rodgers the most, the people that seem to be the most anti-Aaron Rodgers are what I would call the sort of the woke crowd who, really got offended because of the whole vaccine stuff. I mean, there are some people that think, okay, he's a prima donna. They don't like any prima donnas. But for the most part, the thing that got Aaron Rodgers into the most hot water was the vaccine stuff at a time when the vaccine thing and the COVID stuff was all very, very polarizing. And the people that seem to be the most bent out of shape about all of that are those kind of like what I would say the woke folks. So if you signed Aaron Rodgers, there would be a faction of people who have no ability to, worry about what he's doing on the field that would just absolutely make a circus out of every single thing he says and does. The flip side of that is, who are the people that seem to hate the Sanders family the most? The Dion thing and the Shedeur thing and the bling bling and all that other stuff. I'd be willing to bet a large portion of that anti-fan base is probably the opposite of the woke folks. I don't know what you want to call them. Maybe even MAGA guys. I don't even know. They hate the fact that he's young, he's brash, that Deion Sanders is a trash talker, that he's a guy that basically is out there. Shedeur Sanders is a guy who, shows off his watches and, talks about his money and his bling and all the stuff he can buy. And so those 2 factions of people would have to somehow reconcile the fact that their favorite team, has a guy they really can't stand that's playing the most prominent position. But they'd also have to go, they would also be pitted against each other. I think that would be worth the price of admission, don't you? They would be pitted against each other because, again, one group, hates Shedeur Sanders for a different reason than the other group hates Aaron Rodgers. But all of that, it would be fun. It really would. I wrote about it in the Post-Gazette today. It would all be fun. Don't get me wrong. But all of it ignores the most important thing. And that is, if the Steelers were to do that, they would finally have addressed properly the quarterback position. They would have a rookie coming in who, many people think that, hey, this guy can be the guy, be a guy that can be your starting quarterback for a lot of years, right? You'd bring in a guy also to be that one-year bridge guy who could mentor Shedeur Sanders, sort of teach him the ropes, and give Shedeur Sanders a year where he doesn't have to be the guy. He can learn the NFL, learn how to be an NFL quarterback, get some opportunities to play here and there, but for the most part, have no pressure to really try and go out and do what Caleb Williams did this year, because you sign a bridge guy like Aaron Rodgers because you say, we think you can help us win games this year, but you're old. But we also think there's a value in having you around for a rookie quarterback to be able to, pick your brain. And the thing is, there's a lot of people that think, well, Aaron Rodgers is a prima donna. He wouldn't want to do this. He wouldn't want to, mentor Shedeur Sanders. I'd tell you two things. One thing where I think you're wrong. One thing is, Aaron Rodgers admires Deion Sanders. He said as much. He likes Deion Sanders. He admires the way that he's coached at Colorado. He thinks that he's actually really good for college football. He thinks that he's actually really good for his players, which he is if you actually get beyond all of the, what I would call look at me stuff. I mean, Deion Sanders is doing it the right way. You don't have to like him. You can say that, oh, well, what does he ever want or whatever. But if you look at what he's doing in terms of molding young men, which is what your job still is in college football, I mean, he's got guys that, guys that work with his guys with financial literacy stuff. He's got, mentoring programs for guys. He's got business programs for guys. He's got all kinds of different things, right, that go beyond the football field to make sure that his guys are successful no matter what they do. He's doing it the right way. Aaron Rodgers has said as much. Aaron Rodgers admires him. He admires Deion Sanders. And Aaron Rodgers knows that he's probably in his last season. So he doesn't have to be threatened by a young quarterback that the team drafted, because he's going to be the guy for this year, but he knows he's probably retiring. So I don't think there's any question that he would probably want to mentor Shedeur Sanders. Like, he's 41 years old. It's over for him. He knows it. And I think that's the key here. If there's a quarterback out there that Aaron Rodgers absolutely would help out and try and mentor, it probably would be Sanders, because of the way Aaron Rodgers feels about his dad. And because this isn't 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you know what? Aaron Rodgers might have been a little prickly to, a young quarterback coming in. He might have been like, Ben Roethlisberger to Mason Rudolph. But not now. I honestly think that if Aaron Rodgers plays this year, he's going to try and be sort of a different kind of guy. And I would point to Ben, who probably wasn't a very good guy early in his career and probably didn't treat people the right way for a lot of his career. But the last few years, he sort of became that guy that, tried to be a good teammate, tried to be a better person. And there's some people say, wow, it was all an act. Well, I mean, I don't know how you could know a man's heart. I'm just telling you, this is, from somebody who observed and covered the team and was around, has been around a long time. Late in Ben's career, he was a little bit different guy than he was early in his career, obviously. Getting married, having kids. But I think the other part of it is the inevitability of, hey, my career is coming to an end. Do I want to be remembered as a jerk? Or do I want to be remembered as a better guy? That's what I would tell you. And so to me, I think it's so important to note that that's where he's at. Aaron Rodgers, I mean. He's at the end of his career and he knows it. And if you're a guy that's at the end of your career, the psychology is much different, I think. If you're at the end of your career, you kind of know, listen, I need to get this done as much as I can get this done. Because this is it. And maybe I want to leave a legacy. And one of the ways you leave a legacy, mentoring a young guy. Mentoring a young guy. Right? I mean, if Aaron Rodgers came in, again, there's that faction of, and he's very polarizing, there's that faction of people that no matter what he does, they're going to hate him. I get it. But if he comes in and he plays well, he's a good teammate, which, listen, by all accounts, despite all of the talk about, well, he's a prima donna and all this other garbage, I'll be honest with you. I've never heard people say he's a bad teammate. But if he comes in, he's a good teammate. He helps, the Steelers win. He wins a playoff game, God forbid. And he were to mentor a young quarterback, that would probably go a long way to changing his legacy a little bit. So I think it's important the reality is, I think it's important to note that I don't think you're going to get prima donna jerk Aaron Rodgers that some people say he is. And a lot of that is based on, what he has actually said with respect to some of the stuff, with respect to the vaccines and that kind of stuff. And, again, that's a very polarizing issue in this country, obviously. But the reality is there are a number of people who just can't get over that. And so that's that aspect of it. Now, we talk about Sanders. And you say, well, the problem with Sanders is he's going to be off the board in the top 5 picks. Probably right. But if you're the Steelers, and again, they're hosting him tomorrow, so they at least like him on some level. If you're the Steelers, okay, and you have acquired all of these compensatory picks, which they have, and you're looking at some of the other picks you have in the draft over the next 2 years, you have to ask yourself this. Is it worth it? If I know that I'm going to get my franchise quarterback for the next 10 years, is it worth it to give up a number of picks, especially these compensatory picks, which you weren't going to have anyway? In other words, you got them basically because free agents left, so they're extra picks. But what if you could put together a package of picks that enabled you to move from where are you at, 20 or 21 or whatever you're at, up into the top 3? If I told you, listen, you're going to trade, 5 picks, whatever. You're going to swap your first rounders. You got to give them another first rounder, a second, and then 3 of these compensatory picks or whatever. And then you're going to be able to draft, Shedeur Sanders. If I told you right now that Shedeur Sanders was going to be a really, really good, that Shedeur Sanders was going to have a really, really good career and be a really good quarterback? If you still said you didn't want the Steelers to do that, then you probably don't understand the NFL. Honestly, you just don't understand the NFL. You got to have a quarterback. And if you have a chance to get a quarterback, it doesn't matter what you have to do to give up to get him. You got to make the deal. I'm not saying the teams in the top 2 or 3 are going to make a deal with the Steelers. But my point is, there's this idea that, well, you can't give up too much. Really? Actually, I don't have a problem if you have to overpay a little bit. If you have a chance to draft a quarterback that you really believe is going to be, your guy for the next 10 or 12 years. I say this all the time, and there are a number of people that are just so enamored with picks. Go back and look at the Steelers drafts over the last, 10, 12 years. I mean, sure, there's been good picks. But the reality is, there's a number of first rounders, second rounders, third rounders that just didn't pan out. And so, maybe he'll be a bust, as CL here says. But maybe he won't. My point is, if I said to you, Shedeur Sanders, we can look in our crystal ball, and Shedeur Sanders is going to be a really good player for the next 10 years. If you don't make a deal to go get him, I don't. What are you trying to do as an organization? Now, maybe they don't think he's that guy, which I get it. But if they do, and they believe that he could be that guy, and they don't go get him, that's a dereliction of duty in my mind. And I would even go one step further. If they think he's the best quarterback in the draft, and they're convinced that Cam Ward is going to go first, and say they're pretty convinced that they only need to get up to, say, number 3 to draft Shedeur Sanders, and they have to throw in TJ Watt, I would do that too. I know that there's a lot of people in this town, oh, you can't trade Watt. No way. I'm here to tell you, you can. And if it brings back a franchise quarterback, you almost have to, don't you? Don't you have to go get the guy? I mean, haven't we seen this enough? All you need to do, here are 2 franchises I look at and say, these are poster child for what I'm talking about. The first is the Dolphins, who had Dan Marino. When they had Dan Marino, every single year they were a playoff team for the most part. Never won the big one, which that's a different discussion. I've often said, really, they should have fired Don Shula at about 1990, 91. They should have fired him. But, of course, they were never going to do that. But if they wanted to win a Super Bowl, they should have fired him in like 1990. It was very clear that he wasn't going to build a team around Dan Marino that was going to be able to win the Super Bowl. They needed a new coach, a new philosophy, and as he got older, he just started slipping. That's a different discussion for a different day. But the bottom line is, since he's retired, I don't think they've won a playoff game. The Bills, after Jim Kelly, the Bills were one of the best teams in the late 80s, early 90s, and even into the late 90s, into the late 90s. Then Jim Kelly retired. It took until they got Josh Allen for them to be relevant again, because they didn't have a franchise quarterback. I mean, the Bills and the Dolphins were 2 teams that, were among the best in the AFC, every year from say 87 to 98 or something, 99. And since then, they've been in a vast wasteland until the Bills found Josh Allen. But again, if you look at Josh Allen, right, it wasn't exactly like he fell down, to them. They had to have a, season where they were able to draft him. And he was drafted, in the first round of the 2018 draft, he was 7 overall. I mean, that's the reality. If I told you that Shedeur Sanders could be the Steelers' version of Josh Allen, and there's something inside you still saying, well, no, we shouldn't trade that much for him or whatever, then I don't know what to tell you. I wish I could, get you to understand how important it is to have a franchise quarterback, period. And if you don't, then it becomes really, really difficult to win. That's just how it is. And so I think that, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the Steelers have to commit to going to get their quarterback. You got to get a quarterback. And so there's that. One of the funnier stories in town, at least in my mind, is this Pat McAfee thing. There was all these rumors floating around that Pat McAfee, because he has a show in Pittsburgh, that Aaron Rodgers was going to basically have his announcement, the shows at PPG, Paints Arena, and everything else. And look, and Pat McAfee and a number of other people basically said there's not going to be any grand announcement tonight. But obviously, in Pat McAfee's case, he could have debunked this about a week and a half ago. But he didn't. Why? Because it's generated a lot of hype for the show. Now, the show was sold out, so, he didn't need Aaron Rodgers hype, but obviously, any kind of publicity is good publicity. Anything that gets people to talk about you, look into you, celebrate you, whatever, is always a good thing. So if he really was concerned about, this isn't going to happen, I don't want to have people get false hope, he would have debunked this thing, 2 weeks ago when it started. But he didn't. Waited till like yesterday or today, basically, to say, oh, well, wait a minute. I never said that Aaron Rodgers was going to make an announcement. That's funny. To me, that's funny. Because, again, he could have debunked it if he wanted to, but he didn't. And if you don't, take the time to debunk a rumor like that, it tells me that you wanted it floating out there and wanted it to be, something that people talked about. So I laugh, but it is called basically good business. Good business 101. Good business 101. That's what it is. And I think that, Pat McAfee was smart enough to know, boy, people are talking about this show, even though it's sold out. We've got a lot of people that are talking about it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people trying to pay attention to it or whatever. And we can hype it up even more and promote it even more, I think that is very clear what happened here. Mo actually brings up the other scenario, obviously. Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign, and the Steelers end up drafting Jalen Milroe. I wish I could do a poll here. Would you rather have Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur Sanders or Mason Rudolph and Jalen Milroe? I know which way I'm going. I think I've made it very clear in the last few days I'm not a big fan of Jalen Milroe, not a big fan of Jackson Dart. I've said if the Steelers are going to move up to get one of the top quarterbacks, I might listen to that, although I have some hesitation about even those guys. But if they feel like either of them is their franchise guy, they need to go. They need to do what it takes to go get him. They just do. Because if they do go get him like that, I think it's really going to be kind of cool. But it would also suggest that they're no longer interested in the yearly let's go sign whatever the retread is. Period. Who's the retread? That's the game they've played the last 3 or 4 years. Game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's, and when you get there, say hello to Archie for me. Archie was kind enough to donate his sign for us to have a little background. So that's nice. Anyway, Archie's, when you get down there, tell Archie I said hello. Let's move on. Pitt, Papa Conte is the latest Pitt guy to leave. Jeff Capel has 3 scholarship guys left. Brandon Cummings, Andy Nadia, and Cam Corrin. And then he's got 2 guys coming from Iowa State, and he's got an incoming freshman, Amari Witherspoon. A lot of work to be done, but this is college athletics now. If you're a team like Pitt, you're not elite, you're not mid-major, you're somewhere in the middle. So here's what you are. You're a team that basically is the in-between the lower level and the elite. You basically grab guys out of the transfer portal that aren't going to cost a ton of money, that are coming from maybe mid-majors or smaller schools, or in the case of the 2 guys at Iowa State, guys that are at majors that are underutilized. Okay, you bring them in. If you get them better, they leave. They go somewhere else and probably transfer up, although some of these guys will transfer down. I don't think it's the worst thing for Pitt. Papa Conte played about 22 games or something this year. But at the end of the day, what starts to happen is you've got too many bodies to try and replace to think that you're going to have to hit an inside straight and basically hit it right to get enough guys in to make your team good enough to get to the NCAA tournament. So that's the news of the day, Papa Conte. I don't. Again, they brought in Deshaun Jackson as a big center. There's not a lot of minutes for big men, I guess, if you look at it that way. We'll see what happens, but Jeff Capel has got some real work to do in the transfer portal, and he's got to get it done pretty quickly. Anyway, at the end of the day, it's going to be, Pirate fans are really excited because they won today and they beat the Cardinals, and they won the series against the Cardinals, and now they're 5-8, blah, 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 blah. I mean, their small sample sizes are just what they are, small sample sizes. I mean, at the end of the day, they've won 38% of their games. Do the math on that long term. It's good they won, but they didn't play great baseball again. They got a good effort from their pitching staff, obviously. Honestly, though, watching the Cardinals play, I just think that team is really not very good offensively. They're going to struggle to score runs all year. And so there's that. The Pirates will go to Cincinnati. Then they come back for a long home stretch, against Washington and Cleveland. So they have an opportunity to get some things done. Today they had the ultimate – every time I think the Pirates are going to do something crazy and think I've seen it all, they do something even more crazy, and that was, of course, the collision at home plate under a pop fly. So the Pirates, to me, don't hit well, don't field well. They've pitched okay at times, but to me, their defense and their hitting is just not going to be sustainable enough for them to have a winning season, period. They've got to get so much better in so many areas. The bullpen has struggled, although, again, the bullpen today was really good. So we shall see as the season unfolds what it looks like. But to me, this looks like another season we're going to watch. 76, 77 wins and discussions about how close they were and how there was bad luck and all the other stuff, and that's why they didn't get to the playoffs or didn't get to the wild card. To me, it's the Pirates. And, of course, they've had a couple of PR nightmares, taking the logo off of the right field wall, the Roberto Clemente logo off the right field wall. Then there was bricks that were all, donated or whatever with the people's names on it. They ended up taking them down and taking them to a dump somewhere and not telling people. Those kind of PR nightmares, nobody cares about if you win. They get magnified when you lose, though. At any rate, we will do it again tomorrow. I don't think we'll be talking about a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, making an announcement tonight, but he could, right? He could. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Enjoy your night.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.